Hey guys, JB here from Alpha Wolf Consulting, coming to you today with the next lesson in the Introduction to Sales and Communications course, which is the lesson on face-to-face sales. So an important thing to understand when we're talking about sales is just communication. So in face-to-face communication, we are able to communicate at the highest level because we're able to utilize body language, facial expressions, the tonalities, our tonalities and our language patterns. Okay. These are things that we don't have access to when we're selling via, email sales letters, when we're selling via phone sales. Okay. And all of these different things. So to understand this is just to understand that when we're in face-to-face sales engagements, we have to be aware of how we use our facial expression, how we use our body language to convey messages. Okay, because the way in which we, utilize our body language will communicate different meaning. The way in which we utilize our facial expressions will convey different meaning. So we need to become aware of how, when presenting and when, communicating to a potential buyer, we have to be aware of how our body language and how our facial expressions are being perceived. Now, the easiest way to do this is through observing a potential buyer's body language and facial expressions. Is their body language in line with our body language, or is their body language in conflict with our body language? Are we trying to be quite open and they're sitting there trying to be quite closed off? You know what I mean? So just understanding this, but it's also understanding that how we are perceived as people, how our communication style is perceived, how the information that we are, communicating is being perceived. Because on the subconscious level, well, a potential buyer's subconscious, just like our subconscious, is sitting there and analyzing micro features and micro expressions. So it's not the big like, oh, this guy's smiling, so he's happy. No, it's in the eyes, it's in the forehead, it's around the nose, it's around the mouth. They're analyzing each and every little aspect of who we are and how we communicate, and they're picking up or disseminating different meaning based on personal bias. So we just have to understand when communicating communication strategies, or the way in which we communicate and are perceived while communicating, are very biased. People have personal bias to how they like to communicate or how they think communication or the meaning behind communication should be. So it's just to understand that in face-to-face sales, we have the maximum opportunity to influence and communicate effectively, but we also, if unaware, okay, we can communicate the wrong meaning, or our meaning can be misconstrued or perceived to be different than what the words we are saying. So things like your eyes, things like your nose, how your face is, if you're all scrunched up and all of that, that can convey different meanings. If you're sitting there and you're trying to show someone you care, but you're sort of slouching back and sitting down, like that's going to send a different meaning. So we just have to be aware of this because this is an added element in the communication strategy. Okay, when we're thinking about our sales presentation or how we engage with potential buyers and how we communicate with them, we just have to be aware of some of the pitfalls. For example, with men, if we're in a face-to-face sales engagement, we want to be slightly off center when talking to men. We don't want to be like directly square with men because it's seen as dominance challenges. So we got to understand in the subconscious mind, okay, in our subconscious is all our behaviors, all our learned evolutionary skills and things like that, like things like survival instincts and things like, you know, threat analysis, fight or flight mode, all of that. So when we're with selling man to man, okay, so two men selling together, or two men communicating, we don't want to be squared up face to face with them, and we don't want to have our hands high or our hands low, because if you think about it like this, as a bloke, you don't want to get hit in the nuts. So if someone's got their hands around your genitalia, you're going to feel on edge and you're going to be a bit distracted, okay? Just to the same, if someone's got their hands up, that can indicate attack, or it can be perceived as an attack. When we understand distances between each other, we don't want to be standing right up in each other's face. We want to have a nice buffer zone between us to where there's a level of comfort. Because when we're communicating, okay, there is these mannerisms, these mannerisms, or there are these like rules that we all have within ourselves that we have created. Some come from evolution and past experience, like evolution, some come from past experiences. Like a lot of guys understand that, you know, in terms of when someone's up in your face, that's usually an aggressive or a dominance challenge. So we don't want to be there as this unaware, amateur salesperson where we're jumping up and getting up in everyone's face and making them feel uncomfortable. What our aim is when communicating is to put someone at ease and make them feel comfortable so that there's no added stress, so that there's no added fear. Just to the same, we don't want to have our hands in our pockets. We don't want to have our hands, behind our back, because that's going to, what are you doing with your hands behind your back? Why are your hands behind your back? Why would you have your hands behind your back when you're talking to me? Who are you? What are you doing? So we got to understand this, but through communication, some people naturally like to stand with their hands behind their back, and that's okay. Like, but we're not going to, on a subconscious level, okay, trust that person at the highest level, because their behavior is sort of not suspicious, but it's not in how we think conversations or communication should be congruent. So what we're trying to be is congruent with the way in which we communicate, so that we're communicating the right message and creating the right environment or the right atmosphere to communicate effectively. So we don't want to be, up in someone's face with our hands right by their face where we can easily punch them in the face and strike them. Like, we want to be talking to someone in a state where they're at ease and relaxed, so that they can listen and process to the words and the information that we are communicating. If our hands are up in their face, they're going to be half listening, but they're going to be watching our hands saying, are you going to punch me in the face? Just to the same with women, we don't want to have our hands up high because their breasts are there. We don't want to have our hands down low because their genitals are there. So we want to keep our hands in neutral stances in terms of, having our hands in a place that is a neutral place where people aren't perceiving that we're about to attack them. Okay. So another important thing is that if we are going to be animated when talking to people, we want to have a little bit more distance, in terms of we want to take half a step or a step back from where we would normally talk to them, or we want to, talk off center, in terms of we're not facing the other direction, but we want our body to be facing off center to them, so that when we're doing movements, they're not thinking, oh, there's a punch coming to me face. Okay. So we got to understand this, is that a lot of the ways in which we communicate, okay, and the underlying of communication, especially with men, so male on male communication, there is always a perceived threat of danger. Now, it doesn't mean that, your best mate that you've always known, that's different. But when we're talking about a stranger that we don't know, that we don't understand their mannerisms, okay, we want to make them feel comfortable by being neutral. So we want to have our hands in front of us. We want to have our hands in a stance where it's not easy for us to just punch up and strike them in the face, because that is what a lot of people are going to be doing when we're in face-to-face sales. They will be perceiving threats. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone's there thinking, oh, this guy's going to punch me in the face. It's that we want to be making sure that we're broadcasting to someone that I am calm, I am rational, I am a non-threat to you for physical violence, and that we're just having a conversation that is easy. If I'm up in your face and my hands are there and I'm talking to you, you're going to start to feel pressure that I am being like stepping over boundaries, that I am being too forthcoming in terms of putting pressure on you. So just understand this, that the ways in which we communicate, especially when face to face, we have to understand that there is always going to be a perceived threat of danger. Now, it mightn't be a conscious perceived threat of danger, but there will be a subconscious perceived threat of danger, because that's what our subconscious mind is doing, is looking to keep us safe. So just understand that. But the other thing to understand is tonality and volume. We don't want to be up in someone's face shouting. So if we're standing quite close to someone, we want to take the force out of our voice. We want to lower our voice in terms of, we don't want to have force in our voice and just saying like, hi mate, have you heard about solar? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to be forceful with the words that we say when we're in someone's space, because that's going to create perceived threats. And it doesn't mean that the threat is real, but there will always be a perceived threat of danger when we are talking with force in our voice, in terms of when we're in close proximity to other people. We don't want to be agitated and jumping up and down with our tonality and going, hey, mate, have you ever seen a, you know what I mean? We don't want to be coming across like that. So we want to be calm. We want to lower our, you know, our force behind us, and we want to talk, we can still talk with force, but we don't want to talk with force and volume. So we don't want to, start doing things that are going to set off the alarm bells for a potential buyer, that they're in danger, or that we're, unsafe, you know, aggressive, angry, stressed, anything like that. But the other thing is have you ever tried to be in a calm space when someone's highly anxious and highly agitated? It makes you highly agitated. So we have to understand that we do transfer energy out as well. So when we're in, like, communicating face to face, and when we're in the presence of someone else, we are sending and receiving energy in terms of how we move. So if we're sitting there moving like this, we're sending out a lot of like anxious energy. We're sitting there and we're moving and we're twiddling and we're twitching and we're just moving really quickly. We're creating an environment where a customer or a potential buyer is going to start to feel, is this person all right? Are they right in the head? Okay, so we want that, but we also want to be communicating in a way that's congruent with how someone expects a salesperson for, the industry, product, service, or offer that we are selling is going to act. But we also want to make someone feel at ease so that we're not intimidating them. Because if we intimidate someone, that's not a good thing, because we're creating an environment where people feel unsafe around us. And if people feel unsafe around us, they're going to feel like they need to get away from us. And in sales, what we're trying to do in the sales situation is we're trying to create enough time. So we're trying to extend the time and the comfort that someone will listen to us, will hear out what we say, what we have to say, will, be able to sit there and think about what we're saying and how it impacts them without having to worry about perceived danger. So that's an important thing when we're face to face, is that we always have to worry, well, not worry, but we always have to be mindful of how we are being perceived, especially if we are a male. If we are a female, okay, and female selling, it's a little bit less than that because there's not so much the perceived threat of danger. But as a male salesperson, we always have to be mindful of that, especially when talking to people of the opposite sex. So we don't want to be talking to a female and shouting. We don't want to be talking aggressively towards a female, because that can create a real threat of danger from someone walking up and knocking you out. Because I don't know about you, but if I see someone yelling at a Sheila or talking aggressively to a Sheila, that fella's getting confronted every day of the week. So just understand this, that it's not just the person you are talking to that you have to worry about in terms of how you're being perceived. But when we're in face-to-face sales, if we're in a public setting, we have to worry about how everyone else is perceiving us as well. Because if we're oblivious to how other people are seeing us while we are communicating, we can shoot ourselves quite easily in the foot to like to dismissing any future communication or potential of communication with other buyers. So that's an important thing to realize, is always be mindful of the environment you're in, especially when selling face to face, because how we act, okay, it's sort of like this. If you've ever gone past a shopping center and you've seen the charity people that go out there and they generate, you know, donations for charities. Well, if you see these people and they're sitting there yarning about how great it is that they just got $100 off this fella, they got $100 off that fella. How great am I? I just got all this money off all these suckers. And you see that. And then they go, hey, mate, would you like to donate to a charity? You'd be like, yeah, nah, get fucked. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't be going there. You wouldn't be doing that. Like, I personally would just walk past and laugh at them and say, nah, mate, not happening. So understand that how we're being perceived, situational awareness of everyone in our environment, especially when door knocking. When door knocking, we don't want to be perceived as being callous. We don't want to be perceived as being slimy, as being money hungry, as being, only focused on winning sales. So we shift our narrative, okay, in our mind from making sales to finding customers. Do you understand that charity scenario where the two fellas are talking about how much money they've made? That shifts when they're talking about donations, in terms of, if instead of they're talking about, I got $100 from this dude, $100 from that dude, $100, and they're talking about, well, we were able to get, one, two, three, four, five people to donate today. How good is that? Like, when we shift that narrative of how we talk and the mannerisms we use, what we're able to do is we're able to shift the focus from, oh, these guys aren't just trying to, earn money. These guys are actually trying to get donations from the charity. They're really enthusiastic about getting the donations. So that's an important thing to remember. All right. Well, I hope you understand a little bit more about this, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.